Well, first of all, I wasn't planning on doing this video tonight, but I was just stood up by my podcast guest. So I decided since I was ready to do a video, I would do a video. Just go with it, right? So I've been thinking a lot about what it is to be human. And humans, unlike other animals, we seem to be able to sort of make the world as a reflection of our stories. And we make meaning as we go. And we kind of gravitate toward each other and share our meaning together. We agree on what things mean. And then we make rules about what we've agreed on. And then we start enforcing the rules about what we've agreed on. And in that way, over time, because the rules get enforced using coercion and violence and loss of freedom, the consequences for not believing in the collective belief system make those beliefs real and concrete, and the meanings seem true, even though we made them up. And that's where we forget that we have a lot more freedom than we think we do. So I've been spending a lot of time in the past few years wondering, how do we do this differently? As humans on the earth, what have we forgotten? I really believe that we're in the midst of a renaissance, that things are shifting, that the poles are collapsing. As humans, we've taken the poles, the duality, as far apart as possible. The left is as far away from the right as it can be. Up is as far away from down as it can be. And so in that stretching, the poles have collapsed. And now there's this emergence of something new. That's really exciting to me, to be alive in a time where there is an emergence of many new things, new technologies, new gender identities, new relationship understandings, new religions. It's a time of newness, which is also really hard on the biology that we carry, which is ancient. Humans have been around for almost 200,000 years in the form we're in now, and longer than that in other forms. And things have been relatively static, give or take ice ages and things like that, until the past few hundred years, which is a really short period of time. And in that few hundred years, the conditions in which these ancient DNA strands find themselves are so radically changed that our bodies are really struggling with this transition, this really rapid transition. We've created substances with our minds that nature never envisioned, although we are part of nature, so she's working through us and in us as well. But our separation from nature is another example of a polarity collapsing. We have created this story a few thousand years ago that really caught hold, about 1,500 years ago, that we are separate from nature. Not only are we separate, but we are destined to dominate nature, to control it, to force it to produce for us, that everything we see is for our pleasure. It all belongs to humans. And that worldview led to this idea that we are not nature, but somehow supreme beings who command this realm. And that has led to our sickness. If you think of it this way, a human body has a scaffolding, a blueprint, an idea. In some traditions, they call it a dreaming. this blueprint of what this human will look like that's encoded in those two spiraling serpent-like DNA strands with their codes aligning to hold this blueprint of hair color and eye color and whether or not cilantro tastes good to them, what their skin color will be like. There's this idea, this dream of this human body. And then all of the materials of life on Earth, magnesium and phosphorus and water, carbon, amino acids, essential fatty acids, all of these building blocks, these substances, they come and dance around this idea, this dream, this blueprint for a human. And that dance, if it's coherent enough and harmonious enough, leads to a viable life form, a fetus that then becomes a baby, that then becomes a toddler, all the while bringing more building blocks into the body, more materials, more magnesium, more phosphorus, more carbon, more oxygen, more water, that is the rain, so that we can build a body over time on the blueprint, on the dream of that human. Without the natural materials of life on Earth, we are just a dream. We are just breath with nothing to breathe it. We are made of the dying of other things, like the calcium in our bones is made up a lot of the calcium of the sea creatures that died millions of years ago, whose bodies were compressed into limestone that is carried into our waterways by rain, and then we drink that calcium, that limestone, into our bodies, and it gives us calcium for our bones. Or we drink the milk of cows, or we eat spinach out of our garden, and all of that is bringing this calcium into our body so that we can have strong bones. Like, our body doesn't just miraculously appear. We are made of death, the dying of things that have died for us to be alive. And if that's not humbling, for me, that awareness that my life is completely dependent upon and hinges on the death of many other things every day calls to my heart the need to live my life in a way that honors the dying of all of those things that have given their life for me to live well. And it has called me to be really careful about what I eat and where I get my food from, knowing not only that I'm making up my body of those things, but that I'm also asking those beings to sacrifice their lives for mine. And I think this is something that our ancestors understood in a way that we have forgotten. Part of that collapsing of the poles, taking the separation as far as we can. Humans in times past deeply understood what it meant to make a tool, to heal a broken bone, to tend a dying person, to feed themselves and their children. There was a rawness and a closeness and an interbeing that could not be compromised without major consequences. And we have abandoned that awareness for a hyper-individualistic, scarcity-minded, dominating, and oppressive worldview. I don't mean to be negative, though. I mean, humans have also done some really amazing things that our ancestors could have never imagined. We've cured diseases they couldn't have even, one, thought of, but then two, imagined curing. We've found out how to clean water. We've figured out, amazing advances in the transmission of information and technology. And so that's really why it feels like a renaissance to me, not a starting over, not like we're going back to primitive times, although that could be possible too if we don't change the way we're doing things. But this idea that we can have the best of us available the best of our technology, and the deepest reverence. And then what might life look like here? So for me, that's what it means to be human. This body is an ecosystem in itself. All of the organs work together in a coordinated way so that this body can operate as a whole and harmonious ecosystem by itself, and then it coordinates with the ecosystem outside of the confines of the human body with everything else around us. We're communicating with plants. I'm looking to the side because I have a corn plant here. We're communicating with the plants through pheromones and chemicals all the time, even though it's not conscious in our minds. We communicate with our pets all the time through subtle shifts in heart rate, through subtle shifts in body chemistry. Our pets can smell and sense those changes, which is why therapy dogs and seizure dogs are so valuable to their people. We're just constantly in this sea of communication that we are estranged from. But I don't think it has to be that way. I'm not sure why I'm talking about all this right now, except I felt really called to. I was looking out in our yard while I was waiting for my podcast guest who did not show up. And I saw the bunny eating the clover, and I saw the chicken drinking out of the bird bath, and I saw the fairy ring of mushrooms, and the butterflies, and the trees, and how they're all communicating with each other, and how I'm made of that stuff. I'm made of those mushrooms. I'm made of that squash plant that I can see out there. The bunny and I are made of the same water. We drink out of the same, waterways here. Like we are so interconnected. And when we allow ourselves to understand that deeply, it is impossible to feel alone here, no matter where we are, no matter what humans around us are saying or doing. The depth of the awareness of our interbeing, as Thich Nhat Hanh calls it, it just changes everything. Thank you for listening to my rambling. And thank you for being a part of this web, this ecosystem that we are all tending to and deeply a part of. And I would just encourage you, invite you, and challenge you to look around you, to the plants, to the animals, to your neighbors, and to let yourself realize that they see you deeply, that the plants see you deeply, that the bunny sees you deeply. You are not alone. You are not hidden away. You are not invisible. Your actions are not without consequence. You are an integral, interwoven, completely important part of this whole web, and everything you do makes it ripple. So what kind of ripples are you going to make?